May 2005. The more things change, the more they stay the same. So let's just get to the books. I'm very excited about this stuff. The first book I read in May of 2005, Map of Bones by James Rollins. This is a Sigma Force novel, and uh, some monks unleash a terror attack and steal the bones of the Magi that brought the gifts to Jesus when Jesus was born. Call in Sigma Force, led by Grayson Pierce. They have to figure out what's going on, follow the bones, follow the monks. This is going to lead to the seven wonders of the world, clues leading into clues. Who are these bad guys? What sort of hell on earth are they going to unleash? I'm a big fan of James Rollins, not a huge fan of his Sigma Force books. They feel like the Da Vinci Code type stuff to me. It just feels like with when the Da Vinci Code was a huge hit, a number of authors decided to um, copy that sort of storytelling. It's just my impression. I could be wrong. It's still a good book, but I personally don't think the Sigma Force books are as good as all the standalone adventure thriller weird novels that James Rollins has written. Sigma Force is fine. Grayson Pierce as a character is fine. The stories are fine, but they seem to me to lack the originality of his earlier works and is instead trading on the popularity of the Da Vinci Code. That's my opinion. Let me know if you have a different opinion in the comments. But that's Map of Bones by James Rollins. After that, we have Gil's All Fright Diner by A. Lee Martinez. And this is about Duke and Earl. They stop at Gil's All Fright Diner. Just want to have a meal. But Loretta, the owner, offers them, I'm reading off the back here obviously, offers them $100 to take care of her zombie problem. Given that Duke is a werewolf and Earl's a vampire, this should be easy money. But of course it's not gonna be. There's gonna be problems. There's gonna be shenanigans. There's going to be undead cattle, an amorous ghost, a jailbait sorceress, and the terrifying occult power of Pig Latin. This is A. Lee Martinez's debut novel. It's really good. It's really funny. Just pulling it out to do this video, reading the back cover copy, I'm going to throw this to the top of my TBR. I want to reread it. I haven't read it since May of 2005. And as soon as I finish, as far as I know, things can always change. But as soon as I finish the book I'm reading now, I think I'm going to reread this. I could use something nice and light and fun. And that's what we've got. I've read some other A. Lee Martinez, and it's good stuff. Gil's All Fright Diner, A. Lee Martinez. After that, we have One Rainy Night by Richard Lehman. Now, I've heard people talking about Richard Lehman. Once I got onto the internet and into chat rooms and things, people talking about Richard Lehman, I picked up one of his books and read it. Wasn't thrilled with it. And it sounded like something that I would love. I do want to reread that book, see if my opinion has changed. But eventually, I said, all right, I got to try something else. This one sounds cool. One Rainy Night. This is, there's a black rain falling in this town, and it's causing people to go kill crazy, essentially. That's the nutshell. And it's wild. The reasons for what's happening are wild, and I absolutely loved it. I immediately was like, I'm reading more Richard Lehman. Now, it has been hit and miss for me. There's a couple that I'm not a huge fan of. There's tons that I haven't read. I would say the majority of what I've read I've enjoyed. But One Rainy Night, one of my favorite Richard Lehman books. Um, Absolutely fantastic. So One Rainy Night, Richard Lehman. After that, excuse me, Family Guy, Stewie's Guide to World Domination by, this is how I have it written down, Stewie Griffin, helped into print by Steve Callaghan. Now, apparently, Steve Callaghan was one of the writers. He worked on the show Family Guy, and this is simply, well, Stewie's Guide to World Domination. It's Stewie Griffin talking about everything, basically his view of the world. He talks about family and pop culture and politics and how it forms and shapes his view of the world and how he would use these things to dominate the world. I'm a huge fan of Family Guy, although I haven't seen a lot of the recent seasons because I don't have Hulu or anything else like that to watch it on. But I could probably find it somewhere. But I watched the very first episode post Super Bowl when it aired. Was watching it religiously after that. Huge fan of the show, especially back in 2005, and I found this book to be quite hilarious. Family Guy, Stewie's Guide to World Domination by Stewie Griffin, helped into print by Steve Callaghan. After that, we have Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Tales of the Slayer, Volume 4. This is 8 stories, 8 different authors, including, I wrote some of this down. Where is it? Nancy Holder, Greg Cox, Scott Alley, other authors, because there's 8 stories, and I didn't name 8 people. So in the mythos of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, when a Slayer turns 18, they have to go through something that is called the Cruciamentum. So their Watcher strips them of their powers, and then they have to face a special vampire. Essentially, I believe that's what it is. In the show Buffy, for her 18th birthday, she was stripped of her powers, and she was locked into a mansion with an insane, a literally insane vampire. And then it's a sort of a turning point because she essentially tells, after this happens, she tells the Watchers to fuck off. So this is 8 stories about 8 other Slayers and their Cruciamentum. Saying that correctly? I think so. So spanning centuries of time, different Slayers of different generations, of different backgrounds, and them going through this ceremony. So if you're a Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan, and if you, in particular, like that episode of Buffy, this is a decent book to read. Buffy the Vampire Slayer, Tales of the Slayers, Volume 4. All right. The next book that I read in May of 2005 is Teratologist, a novella by Edward Lee and Rath James White. Look at that insane cover. It's going to be offensive to people. Look at that insane back cover. This edition is from Medium Rare Books Publishing. It is signed, and I found this at Half Price Books for $7. I had just discovered Edward Lee. I think I'd only read 2. I think I'd only read 2 of his books so far. Maybe 3. I can't remember. I could go back and look, but I'm not gonna. So anytime I was out, I was looking for new Edward Lee books, and I just happened to find this. After reading this, I immediately looked up Rath James White and started buying anything that he had available. So in this book, basically, there's a guy that wants to confront God and thinks the way to get God's attention is through the most blasphemous things, acts possible. This says revulsion, outrage, perversity beyond all imagination. Um, this book, up to this point, was the most extreme thing I had ever read. I was blown away by what went on in this book, and it absolutely cemented my love for Edward Lee. And again, I immediately wanted to read anything that Wrath James White had done. I can't say it cemented my love for him because couldn't tell what he wrote, what Ed wrote. So reading some other stuff by Wrath James White cemented my love for him. But this book was revelatory. Teratologist. Edward Lee, Wrath James White. Amazing. And then we have to flip over to here. Next we have, man, we're going way off in a different direction. Island of the Sequined Love Nun by Christopher Moore. And this is about Tucker Case. He is a pilot, living his life, working for Mary Jean Cosmetics. But after he crashes Mary Jean's pink plane, he's on the run from Mary Jean and really can't find a job. But then he gets hired by this shady missionary and a sex-crazed goddess. Is that what it said? I'm trying to remember the exact synopsis. And he's making these weird plane runs to this Micronesian island, and there's cannibals and ninjas and a cult and just all sorts of craziness going on. And old Tucker Case just wants to live a life, but he's got all these weird things, and the Mary Jean Cosmetics thugs are after him for crashing her plane, and his new employees have something weird going on. It's wild, weird, funny Christopher Moore stuff, and I think I definitely enjoyed this one. It's easy to I can't. My favorite is absolutely Lamb, The Gospel According to Biff, and The Stupidest Angel. After that, it's harder for me to rank where I put his books, but this is probably top half, if I remember correctly. Island of the Sequined Love Nun by Christopher Moore. Next up, excuse me. You can see I'm just getting more and more books to actually hold up during these videos as we get closer to the present, because I've held on to more of these books. So, another one I can show off, Fear of Gravity by Brian Keene. This is a short story collection, and this is a signed limited edition, number 366 of 400 copies. And Brian Keene, I discovered The Rising the day it was released, the paperback from Leisure. The day that came out is the day I discovered it and read it and fell in love with Brian Keene's writing. And again, once I was on the internet, I went to his website, looked at what he had available. This was one of the few things at that time that was available, and so I snagged it. And this, as I said, it's a short story collection, so it has Dust, Babylon Falling, Slouching in Bethlehem, Redwood, The King in yellow, I Am an Exit, which I believe is the introduction to his character, the Exit, or just Exit, a recurring character through a bunch of stories and pops up in some novels, I believe. Purple Rain, Reign. The Revolution Happened While You Were Sleeping, a Summoning Spell remix. Castaways, we'll get back to that in a second. Marriage Causes Cancer in Rats. This Garden Where My Rain Grows. And then there's an introduction and afterword and story notes. Castaways, I did not realize. I haven't read this book since May of 2005. And as soon as I saw Castaways, I was like, wait, he has a novel. called Castaways? Well, this is where it started. Castaways is a tribute to Richard Lehman's Beast House. Um, and it started as just this little short story, and apparently at some point he decided to expand it into a novel, which I bought and read as soon as it came out, but far enough apart that I didn't put this together, and definitely don't know if like this if this story is a scene in that book, or if it's been completely reworked into the book, or completely the whole story just completely reworked. I can't speak to any of that stuff, but I was just surprised when I was reading the table of contents, uh, when preparing for this video, to see Castaways on here, and I checked the story notes, and it's like, yep, that's the basis for the book. So good stuff. A nice look at old Brian Keene work. And again, at this point, all I had read was The Rising, his novel, and then got to read some of his short stories and just cemented my fandom for Brian Keene. Fear of Gravity, Brian Keene, a great short story collection. I don't know if this book is available in any like new edition, but Brian Keene has been printing the complete short fiction of Brian Keene. There's 4 volumes out so far, I think. I've been waiting like crazy for the 5th one because it's supposed to be his IP stuff like Hellboy, X-Files, the one story that I really, really want, which is he wrote a Doctor Who story, but I don't know if there's still problems with getting the rights to reprint that stuff or anything. But all of this should be, it is the complete short fiction of Brian Keene, so I would assume all of this is somewhere in those volumes, which I think I'll eventually pick up because there may be stories in there that I don't have in some of the stuff I have. But anyway, that's that. Next up, The Dead by Mark E. Rogers. I'll tell you, I was very excited to read this because Mark Rogers is the creator of Samurai Cat. You can't see what I'm pointing at, but right over there is my Samurai Cat collection. I've talked about it before. Absolutely hilarious books. The Dead is essentially about the rapture. And the main character is Gary Holland. He, after the rapture happens, he gets together with his family. There's a lot of infighting, but they also have to deal with all the demons and essentially zombies. It feels mostly like a zombie story, but it is post-rapture hell on earth. Gary Holland trying to deal with his family and survive. I was very disappointed in this book. I did not like it much at all. I felt it was very heavy-handed in its religion, which is fine. I didn't know at the time that Mark Rogers apparently very, very religious person. But it felt like one of those books that is so pro-religion that it's anti-everything else. Sort of like William Johnstone, at least his horror, very leans into conservative stuff. And this just, I have no problem with religion in books. I mean, The Exorcist is a religious horror story, right? A lot of people could come at me for that. And I have no problem with that. I don't know. This just, I felt it was off-putting, and I also didn't think it was very well written or the story was very good. I've heard some people say that they love this book. So, maybe make up your own mind. You should always make up your own mind. But The Dead by Mark E. Rogers. Then we have Field Guide to the Apocalypse by Megan Marco. Movie survival skills for the end of the world. This book is hilarious, and it is Essentially, what it says on the front: how to survive an apocalypse or post apocalypse using the skills you can learn from a movie. And just to give you an idea, part one, the false utopia, one of the chapters. So, chapters: how to get off mind controlling drugs, how to recognize a dream world, how to not be replaced by a robot. Then you have the neo medieval world, how to be a rebel in the post apocalyptic wasteland, how to choose an intimidating vehicle, how to convert a 70s muscle car to run on bathtub gin, how not to die in a desert wasteland, you are the Omega Man, or how to synthesize a species-saving serum from your own mucus. That's all part of the neo-medieval world. Part 3 is the advanced technological dystopia. Neo-noir, defining your future self. The detective, the hacker. Replicant, dealing with extraterrestrials. Then you have Apocalypse Then, tips for saving the world, how to stop an alien invasion, how to save the world, massive coordinated animal attack, etc., etc. Hilarious. And I'll tell you what, I'm going to jump right to the about the author part. Tells us about the author, but one of my favorite lines in the entire book is, well, the very last line is, this is her first book. The penultimate line in the book is, Megan invites fans to stay tuned for Field Guide to the Apocalypse Special Edition, in which the word fuck will be replaced with little pictures of walkie-talkies. If you know anything about the movie E.T., you should find that as hilarious as I do. The first of this type of book that I read, there are quite a few books now in this sort of let's use movies to teach us how to survive things, real or fake. There's zombie survival guides. There's how to survive a Sharknado. There's one or two others that you're eventually going to see on my own list here. But this is the first of its kind that I read, I think, and it's absolutely hilarious. I think I've read it twice. It's definitely worth reading more than once. Field Guide to the Apocalypse by Megan Marco. And that's the last one I have to show you. The penultimate book that I read in May of 2005 is Those Who Walk in Darkness by John Ridley. And the main character in this is Soledad Bullet O'Rourke. She is one of those rogue cop types in a world where there are people with powers, mutants, and she kills this one mutant using a gun she designed herself, which is against the rules. She's always doing stuff against the rules, getting in trouble. She works for the LAPD. But now there's a cop killer who has the power of mind control. And so it's not just a guy out there killing cops, it's a guy making other people kill cops. Soledad Bullet O'Rourke is out there to stop this guy. I don't actually remember much about it. I like the sound of it. I probably picked it up because John Ridley is the author. I read I think his debut novel is Stray Dogs, which I absolutely loved. It was made into the movie U-Turn by, what's his name? Who made, Born on the 4th of July and JFK. I can't think of his name. But, hated that movie. Ridley, John Ridley was a writer for Martin, was a writer for Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, wrote on a bunch of TV shows, has written movies, including 12 Years a Slave, and one of my favorite comedies, Undercover Brother. This dude's all over the place. Excuse me, he's written comic books. He's written Academy Award winning movies. written TV shows, award-winning TV shows. And he's written some hilarious stuff and some dark stuff, noir stuff, fun stuff like Those Who Walk in Darkness. Fantastic writer. And it's different than the other stuff I've read by him, but it's right up my alley. That's Those Who Walk in Darkness by John Ridley. The last book that I read in May of 2005 is a book I own, and I know exactly where it is. It's right over there. My finger is pointing almost exactly at where it is, but it is buried, and I was not going to dig it out. But that book is Make Love, asterisk, The Bruce Campbell Way, by Bruce Campbell. Make Love, The Bruce Campbell Way. This is a novel that stars a B-movie actor named Bruce Campbell who is about to break into the A movies. But there's all sorts of problems. He's dealing with all sorts of things that seem to be conspiring to keep him from making that break into the big time. Not just being a cult movie hero. So it is a fictional story about a real person that may have some reality sprinkled in, but a lot of it's fictional. And it's funny. It's funny stuff. Not the funniest stuff I've ever read, and it's definitely a novel. I don't have a little NF, nonfiction note next to it, because he wrote If Chins Could Kill, which was a memoir. That's definitely nonfiction. This is not, but it is very funny. And if you're a Bruce Campbell fan, I think you'll particularly enjoy it. That's Make Love, The Bruce Campbell Way by Bruce Campbell. And that is everything that I read in May of 2005. And once again, even though I told myself I was going to come up with a question before I made this video, I didn't. So I'm going to go simple. What are your thoughts on Family Guy? I think it's a love it or hate it show. There's probably people who don't care one way or the other. But I know people that are super fans. I know people that hate it. What are your thoughts? As I already said, I was there from the beginning. I've been a huge fan of it forever. I don't think every single episode is a hit. Sometimes there's misses, but even those, the ones I've seen, I still think are funny. I love it when they do anthologies. The 3 Stephen King story episode, I think, is fantastic. They've done Bible stories. They've done classics. It was Gatsby, either Huckleberry Finn or Tom Sawyer. I can't remember which one it was. And then there was a third one in that episode. I can't remember what the third one was. The Gatsby one was very funny. I love the cutaways. Some people say it's lazy writing. I think for the most part, cutaways are funny. I think the chicken fights are usually very, very good. Just so extreme and over the top. And then there's the one where it's backwards, which is really fantastic. The musical episodes are entertaining. Time travel episodes. Again, I have not actually seen it in years because I don't have normal cable. I don't have Fox. So I'd have to find... I haven't bothered to look at what streaming service it might be on. But I'm a huge, huge fan. I love American Dad as well. Cleveland Show, I didn't think it was that great. American Dad, I wasn't enamored with when it first came out, but I've come around. I absolutely love that show too. But Family Guy, loved Stewie. Hate Brian, that he's such a douchebag. But yeah, big fan. What do you think? Tell me why you love it. Tell me why you hate it. Tell me why you don't give a damn in the comments below. If you have any comments, questions, or corrections, please put those in the comments below. Comments are open for spoilers. Just post spoiler warning. We try to be polite here on my channel. Please like, share, and subscribe, all the usual YouTube stuff. If you'd care to follow me on other social media, I'll have links for my Instagram and Bluesky in the description below. That's all I have for you this week, so until next week, read more books.